I think that overall TSM is actually not that good of a team. I feel like that our mid and late game is superior.
NA is just greater than EU. Now it's a good time to settle it for once.
Never look back. All by the TSM are there, and there's a quadra kill for Bjergsen.
Soren, you stole my penta? Are you trolling?
Now they're charging forward on the front. Oh my God! He gets a massive knock, and they're able to clean house. Nowhere to the woods. He do it. Taking out TSM. Unicorns of Love. Who else to hand them their first loss?
We wanted to keep the tradition of UOL beating TSM.
Franchise history, I guess, TSM loses to Unicorns, so it's this time we'll make it back.
Welcome to the final here at Rift Rivals 2017. TSM and Unicorns of Love have earned the right to represent their region, and tonight they will settle the score in this fight between the NA and EULCS. A lot of fans for both teams showing up at the studio today, as well as the Unicorns of Love. Who is that man in playing? I don't know who that is. And there is Exile taking to the stage. A big day for him. He wants to turn some heads and show that he is worthy of the title, and so does Doublelift, of course. Maybe he will be able to beat the Unicorns of Love with this TSM lineup. Good evening, everyone. I'm EpicSkillshot supporter, joined here by Azale, Isaac Cummings Bentley, something like that, Andrew Verdiesday, and Joshua Jat Leesman. A good desk and a good representation of both EU and NA, because if we take a look back on the results of the group stage and the past couple of days, North America was reigning supreme. 12 wins there and only 6 wins for the European teams. TSM's the best, Jat.
As expected, I mean, the record of the last year and a half was, what, 7-1 for North America? So 12-6, underperforming, one would say. With everything else done.
Maybe
no, this was surprising.
Getting better, you know? Maybe they're just finally being able to bring it to our North American overlords. But have to give credit to North America. They really have been stepping up this tournament. And some might consider EU to be a little bit underwhelming. But to me, I feel like that they've been playing how they were during the regular season of the EULCS. And now they've just been exposed.
So they haven't been underperforming. They've just been figured out by the North American teams. And Azale, not just TSM, but even Phoenix One, who not a lot of people had expected a lot from, really carried their weight.
Yeah, they did. I think that a lot of these teams are showing some development, you know, bringing in some new young players. Obviously, a lot of hype around Mike Young, but the rest of the team played very well, too. It was a great event, I think, for Ryu, for Aero, for really the whole team.
And it's going to be a great final. We've got an action-filled best of 5 coming your way today between TSM and the Unicorns of Love. And remember that we also have a bot lane focus stream with Freak, Sven, and X-Special. So be sure to check that out on watch.lolesports.com. If we had to summarize what we will see on that stream, what would it be?
Tier list for 3 hours.
Tier list?
That's all I can talk about.
Well, that would actually be golden. But it will be very interesting indeed. And of course, we also want to know which plays you think deserve some time in the spotlight. Head over to Twitter and send us your big plays of the week at LOL Esports using the hashtag RiftRivals2017. And I think the two teams representing in the finals, they carry a lot of those big plays, UOL and TSM.
Yeah, I mean, I think XL has had a lot of lowlights in lane, but outside of lane,
why you got to bring it up?
Some pretty sick plays. I mean, you know, by the Baron fight, like against TSM last time, Visit Chachi and Exile with the Gnar Vladimir combo, like that was nuts.
But Bjergsen, that man, he's made a lot of solo plays himself. The game versus G2, the game versus UOL, like there have been a lot of impressive performances, and who can forget the legend Mike Young?
For sure, and there we also see the trophy that the two teams are fighting for. So we're going to take a closer look at today's matchup. The Unicorns of Love from EULCS are taking on TSM, where we see some highlights from the NA LCS champions, in this case over Fnatic. They had a 5-0 win streak, or well, actually 3 games in a row, that then got broken by the Unicorns of Love. So we can safely say they have been the best team in the group stage, but why exactly were they so good?
Yeah, well, I think one thing is the game they've been talking all split about trying to win with multiple styles. We actually got to see at Rift Rivals. They won twice with Galio mid, carrying through different lanes, but then were also still able to carry through mid lane with Syndra or Cassiopeia. So they were jack of all trades, but also pretty good at those trades at Rift Rivals.
That is also reflected if we look at the stats breakdown. We've been keeping an eye on EU versus NA in general, but if we look at TSM versus versus the Unicorns of Love. We do see that in terms of getting the early leads, getting the leads in general, getting the objectives and snowballing, TSM has been on point, Azael. And is this reminding you kind of when TSM was at their best form last year?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think they're not quite there yet, you know, not back to that Worlds form, but they have had massive improvements throughout the split, and I think this is the best form that they have been on throughout this split, so they're working towards that, and they're going to try to peak for Worlds.
On stats-wise, Unicorns of Love, they don't look very convincing. They're Vedius, but they've won a couple games. They're in the finals, so what have they been doing well?
Well, what we have been seeing is that when they are able to get themselves some comfort picks and they're able to play their style, that is when they really flourish. The fact that if they can have an even laning phase, if they don't fall too far behind during the early game like we saw against Cloud9, that is where this Unicorns of Love squad really can challenge some of the best from the North American teams.
Yeah, and their team fighting has to be pretty spectacular when they've gotten 2 of the 18 dragons in their games with an 11% Drake percentage. So they have lacked at a lot of things, but they have excelled and over-indexed on team fighting and late game, which has brought them some success.
A couple of, well, matchups that we want to look at. We have to look at the mid lane. We know that Exile has been hit or miss actually during the entire summer split and also in this tournament. He's going up against a very strong mid laner in Bjergsen. How much do we think Bjergsen is going to be able to exploit that mid lane?
I mean, honestly, I think he's going to be able to exploit it pretty heavily. I think that we've seen Exile struggle against pretty much everyone in this tournament. He's been struggling in the summer split. Bjergsen has been dominant, and I expect to see more of that. Exile needs to kind of almost accept the fact that he's going to lose lane, try to do it gracefully.
Yeah, and you see the 11 ISO deaths, which is 6th of 6. It's actually last place. It's a very polite way of saying it. That is a ton of times to die isolated in mid lane.
5th isn't even close. Like, he has like more than double, I think, the next person.
And that is very true, right? And the reality is, like, you can't sugarcoat it. Bjergsen has by far and away been outperforming Exile on an individual level, but when it comes to a team basis, Exile has been able to step up when it counts. Like when he's able to get things like the Vladimir, when he gets champions like Cassin, he can have good performances, but Bjergsen is still going to be the man that I'm looking towards to really be that big playmaker that can outshine Exile.
And sadly for the Unicorns of Love, Exile has been part of that gold deficit that they rack up. They haven't had a single gold lead at 20 minutes in the tournament, but if we look at the top lane for them, Chachi is someone who is significantly ahead of his opponents in those games and has a good matchup versus Hanser here, so will that be able to tilt the matchup?
I think it could very well do. I'm so happy as a European fan to see Chachi be more consistent at this tournament because there are a lot of question marks around how will he be able to perform. And so far, he is ranked at the top for all top laners, and he's looking like one of, if not the best, at this tournament.
Yeah, I mean, he was the spring split MVP in Europe. I think he has been the best top laner in this tournament. I think his Gnar specifically has also been the standout champion for him. It's fairly new in the new meta here as far as it just getting buffed on patch 7.13. I think he has the best command over it, and if he can get Gnar in multiple games, I think that's one of UOL's best chances of winning.
We do have to remember, though, Hanser was actually able to solo kill him on the Kled against that Gnar, so Hanser still certainly can hold his own, but Chachi, I think, definitely has the edge from how he's performed this tournament.
If we take anything or everything rather into consideration, TSM seems to be the more well-rounded team that is able to have the objective control and the macro control, but Unicorns of Love have great team fighting. What does that make you think about how the final's gonna go? Who are you gonna give it to?
I think it's pretty heavily favored for TSM. I'm looking at them for a 3-1. I think the fact that everyone knows that they're looking for this late game team fight style from UOL, TSM can also draft for late game team fighting. And if you're falling massively behind at the start of every game, you're not going to be very successful in the later team fights.
Yeah, my brain has to say TSM, but my heart is going towards the Unicorns of Love. These guys, they always bring something special out. I don't want to call it cheese because it's so part of their style. And I think that they can bring out some unique picks and just get to those late game fights that could very well turn around. Now I'm going to give it 3-2 to the Unicorns.
I think the group stage told us a lot. I'm going to go TSM 3-1.
We'll see what happens, I hope, for some explosive matches. It is time to kick off the deciding fight here between the NA and EU LCS. But before we get into game, Biofrost tells us what a win here would mean for TSM.
You know, I don't remember the last time NA has won anything, so if we could win something, it would mean a lot, at least to the NA fans. And you know, coming into this tournament, people were like, okay, there's a real chance that, you know, in group stages, NA is just going to do really poorly because, first of all, they're flying to Europe and they're going to be jet-lagged. And, you know, that's honestly not the case, but I'm still jet-lagged. But, yeah, it's going to be really important for us to win this tournament just to show that, you know, NA, we're not pushovers.
While NA